was they have a number of fisheries that are very near-shore fisheries. Due to the local oceanography, the water over the continental shelf is anoxic. And so there basically is no fishery over the continental shelf. There's a fishery right next to shore and a fishery on the slope and hardly anything in between. So there was lots of artisanal fishing. The guys go out in little pongas, and because they were going out in small boats and there weren't a lot of harbors, the boat launching would be associated with the appropriate beach. So what you needed was a north-facing sandy beach where you could pull boats in and out of the water. So there was naturally an accumulation of fishermen at places like that. They are very effective fishermen, primitive but very effective, and they fished us. One of the biggest fishery was for a thing called a loco, a big snail. Basically it was like a nucella that went berserk and got huge. Tastes like abalone, very good. And so there was a huge market for it because it tastes like abalone. And they overfished them. They overfished them bad. So they closed the fishery. They closed it for about a decade. And as it was opening up, Juan Carlos started this initiative of Caleta-based management. So the Caletas were these little cooperatives that formed on the beaches that had the right sort of morphology and orientation to launch boats easily. And so what they said was, okay, we'll give you guys control of some stretch of the coastline, and it's your piece of your lease, and you can fish this however you would like. We want you to collect data on the concentration of density of loco, and we'll teach you how to do it. You give us the data, we'll tell you how many locos you can fish there without damaging the population, and you can fish them however you would like. So it's slowly been building, because that's a fair amount of responsibility. The Caleta I worked at, El Quisco, was one of the first, and it was a very well-organized Caleta. And it was fascinating to watch. What they did was they guarded their Caleta. There's a lot of poaching in Chile. And so they had guys hired that would drive up and down on a motorcycle along the cliffs and keep an eye out for poachers, and then they would send boats out to chase them away. And then they kept an eye on their locos, watched how fast they were growing, and then looked for a market. They didn't touch them. They didn't fish them until they had gotten the locos as large as they thought was necessary, and they found a buyer. And so I was there when they did the annual harvest for that year. And boy, it was spectacular. Like in 3 days, they harvested 50,000 locos. It was just, I mean, it was like that whole lab room full of locos, a whole mess of them. And that was it. So they'd gotten a buyer, got a good price, and went out and fished them. It was really quite interesting the way it was run. Basically, the Caleta is a cooperative. So, you know, on the one hand you go, oh, communists, you know. But it really wasn't communist. It was like the way a boat works, a fishing boat here. You know, you've got the captain, the boat owner, the crew, and they land a catch, and everybody gets a share, depending upon who they are. The captain gets more than the crew. I don't know what the owner of the boat gets relative to the captain, but everybody gets a share, depending upon what his job was, what his resource input into the project was. It was exactly the same there. The other thing that happened was that as the boats came in, the fishermen went and looked at each other's catch. And it was hilarious because they were checking out the catch and going, that's not very good ones. He didn't do a very good job. Or, oh, those are big ones. Where did he find those? Those are beauties. So there was this obvious social thing that was going on that was forcing them to, or inspiring them to behave well. If they behaved poorly, like they didn't work as much as the Caleta thought, then they could be voted out of the Caleta. And if you're voted out of the Caleta, then you lose your health insurance and all that sort of stuff. So it was not trivial. Mm-hmm. You could continue to fish, but you just couldn't fish through the Caleta. And the Caleta, you know, provided health insurance, and it's a cooperative. Yeah. So these were things associated with the cooperative, with the Caleta. And so it was a very good deal to be in a Caleta. Mm-hmm. It required you to, you know, pull your weight, but you made better living there than you made if you were on your own. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing was it managed the fishery very well. They were no longer overfishing. There's now lots of caletas up and down the coast, and they're making significantly more money than they did before that, because they've controlled the market. They're not flooding the market. They're releasing the catch in a controlled way. The fishermen are no longer having a tragedy of the commons type situation. It's their bottom, and if they fish it conservatively, then they get the benefit from it. If they fish it poorly, then they are the losers. And so it solved all of those tragedy of the common problems. It's only going to work, though, when you've got a creature that's fairly immobile.
Right.
So, like, it's where they do the same thing for sea urchins and limpets. You've got a hard time, because then they move across out of leases and into other leases.
In what ways do catch shares help out community-based management?
With a community-based
are they
management,
innately, do
no,
they have to
they're
be?
not the same thing. See, what you're doing with a catch share is you're saying, here's the commons, go fish, you get to take this much out of the commons. And so that actually does not control the greed that is inherently associated with fishing in the commons. Because there's no positive feedback to being conservative. You go out and catch your catch share as fast as you can so that you don't waste any more time at it than is necessary. And that's totally different than what these caletas were doing. The whole idea of community-based management probably came out of totally organic development. You know, there were local fishermen, and they were fishing something that didn't move. They were managing a crop. They were managing this portion of the bottom to make it as productive as possible and profitable.